Ever since they bought Wordle, the New York Times games has just exploded in popularity. Maybe it's just my algorithm, but I feel like I get so many TikToks about the connections and Wordle and the mini. And after some careful consideration, I have decided that I want a piece of that pie. I have made my own mini crossword. You can play it right now at crossword.blue. Yes, that is a real domain name, crossword. You can get .blue domains. And I want to spend this video going through the journey about how I made this website. Because at the start, I was really focused on the technical side of things, like how am I going to code this? But I've really come to appreciate the art of writing a good crossword. So that's what this video is going to be. How I went from a complete novice to a veritable crossword expert. I should say that, full disclosure, that before this project, I had actually written one crossword before. It wasn't very good. And I had this issue where I couldn't get my friends to play it because they would have to download this PNG file and then edit the crossword manually in Photoshop. I actually ended up putting a $20 bounty for whoever finished the crossword first, just because no one was playing it otherwise. So this time around, I wanted to make sure I had like a similar layout to the New York Times, like a digital version so that it wouldn't be so hard on my players. I got something up and running pretty quickly, put it on my website, and after fixing all the bugs, there was still an issue with the actual puzzle. It just didn't seem to have quite the same charm as the New York Times. So I did some research and I bought a book, or a PDF really, on the art of crossword creation, the Crossword Constructor's Handbook. Even though the book mainly focused on the full 15 by 15 crosswords, there were still some nuggets of wisdom that I took from it. So in one of my first puzzles, I had this clue how a Kiwi might say hello, with the answer of course being kia ora, which if you didn't know is a Maori greeting that has been adopted by the rest of New Zealand. And it turns out a lot of my players didn't know that either. They kept getting really stuck on this puzzle, and even the players that had heard of this word had no idea how to spell it. But after reading the book, I discovered this is actually quite a common issue in crosswords. And the way crossword writers solve it is they make sure that no square is unchecked, which means that every square is intersected by two words. That way, if you don't know one of the words, you aren't completely doomed. So in this grid, it would mean getting rid of all of these black squares and finding a word that intersects neatly with all of these words, which as you might imagine is quite hard and is kind of the main reason that writing a crossword is actually difficult. It's the reason why crossword writers start with the grid before they do any clues, because if you change a single letter, it could have this cascading effect that means you need to reset the entire grid. And God forbid you make a typo. I remember I created this puzzle and I was so proud of it because I managed to include the words K-hole and Chloe, which are perfect anagrams of each other, and I thought that was very cute. But it turns out, no, that's not how you spell Chloe. And the issue is you can't just shuffle a few things around because everything is interlocked into each other. So I needed to just throw out the entire puzzle. What makes this all slightly easier is the fact that most crossword writers aren't using pen and paper anymore. As the book revealed, most people use specialized software like Crossfire, which can give you suggestions for clues or even fill in the entire grid for you. I've been using a website called Crosserville, which is free and I think it's really awesome. Watching the grid get filled in might make it seem like the art of crossword writing is dead, like you can automate the whole thing. But that is absolutely not true. And if you don't believe me, go ask ChatGPT to write a crossword for you.
Write me a crossword where is a black square that includes the word apple.
The thing is, the autofill uses so many niche and obscure words that it is actually like next to useless. In Crosserville, the little icon for the fill tab is an icon of a man praying. The Crossword Constructor's Handbook actually cautions against these words and calls them crossword ease, as in words that are technically real words but are so obscure you would only ever hear them in a crossword. Things like Ural and oleo and In fact, Crosserville actually gives its words a rating out of 50 based on how good they are. So like a normal English word would get a score of 50, whereas a slightly more obscure thing like psi, as in the Greek letter, would only get a score of 30. And then you have really weird things like ends, as in two-letter ends, or ese, which is the opposite of WNW, which it gives a rating of 10, as in only use these words if you really have to. And then of course you have offensive words like KKK, which get a score of 0, as in do not under any circumstances use these words. You might be able to get away with one of these obscure words, but an entire grid of them is just so unfun to play.
You can often end up in this situation where you have like a lot of bad clues, like pas, as in faux pas, Mei as in like the Overwatch character. Juarez like the kind of pattern. No, it's bad. This is when you have to kind of restart the entire thing.
But then once you've made your grid and you're happy with it, you have the issue of the clues. You could always just use a clue that someone else has written before you, but there's no guarantee that your particular players will be able to interpret it correctly. This is especially true now because you have a whole group of people coming to Crosswords from the New York Times Mini who aren't really familiar with the conventions of crosswords. Most people, including myself, only got into crosswords after finishing the Wordle and needing something else to do. I remember when the New York Times bought Wordle, it really felt like a legacy media corporation massively overvaluing a passing fad.
F. I mean, now I'm hoping for spoilers.
But I will be the first to admit I was so wrong. You know, they've passed 1,000 Wordles, and people are still playing every single day. Now, Wordle is just the crown jewel in an empire of little frivolous word games. But now you have all these people who don't know whether a crossword answer is asking for a first name or a last name. Or they don't know that a question mark at the end of a clue means that they're looking for a slightly out-of-the-box answer. Like an end to alcohol and sex? Question mark? Ism, as in sexism and alcoholism, yeah. I mean, sometimes they can be pretty annoying. But even otherwise straightforward clues can be interpreted in all manner of ways. I think if you're interested in game design, it'd be really valuable to write your own crossword just because you get such an interesting insight into the way people's minds work. I remember I had this puzzle with the word liter in it, but I could only get it to work with the American spelling. And so I wrote the clue, American soda size, and I didn't think anything of it. But then when I gave it to my friends, I had this issue where they kept guessing things like large or super. You really have to be so careful with what information you give your players because they will just take one thing and run with it. Something else I've been trying to do is make sure my clues are, if nothing else, a bit interesting. I had the word panda, which I could have clued as black and white Chinese animal, but I feel like that's so easy, it's not even satisfying. So I instead wrote the clue Chinese animal used as diplomatic leverage, which people would still understand I'm talking about pandas. But then after you finish the puzzle, if you were to Google panda diplomatic leverage, you would learn about the very interesting story of panda diplomacy. It's very difficult striking that balance between too easy and too hard. When you write a puzzle, you don't just have all the answers, you have every single thought process that led you to those answers. So it can be really difficult then to put yourself in the shoes of someone who knows absolutely nothing. I feel like I should warn you that there are some risks that come with writing a crossword. I think some of my puzzles are so hard I might have damaged some of my friendships. I remember I had a 5-letter word with the clue being Old MacDonald had a farm, blank. And obviously the answer to that is E-I-E-I-O. But when I gave the puzzle to my brother, he got the answer right away, that wasn't the issue. He just couldn't for the life of him figure out how to spell E-I-E-I-O. Every combination of E's and I's just didn't seem to make any sense. And so when he did eventually figure out that it was spelt E-I-E-I-O, he got quite mad at me. I think the frustration there is the same frustration that killed off those old text-based adventure games, where you would have to write in the exact sequence of letters in order to progress through the puzzle.
So I can try opening the mouth.
It's really frustrating to have the answer, but the game doesn't let you progress. But then you have the complete opposite problem. I had this one 3-letter word which I clued as 3 @ signs, as in like literally 3 @ signs, with the answer of course being ats. But then when my players got the puzzle, they were so baffled by what they saw, they just didn't even know what to do. I remember I played the game The Witness, it's a beautiful game, and all the puzzles are presented in this super minimal style as well. But kind of because of that, oftentimes I couldn't understand what the game was actually asking of me. I mean, you always have to balance aesthetics and functionality. It's interesting to me to think about why the New York Times games got so popular right now. Because, putting word games in a newspaper is not exactly a revolutionary concept. But I think part of what they did is they figured out how to present things with like a super clean, minimal, and mobile-friendly interface. You can really see this difference if you look at the Washington Post's games. They were themselves very close to buying Wordle, and their game section is just like a complete mess of random slot machine-looking games. But ever since 2023, they have started copying the New York Times' homework pretty strongly. And now me, Adam Dinvu, is also copying the New York Times homework, with the goal of maybe one day having my own empire of word games. Look, in the meantime, I've got the crossword. It's been like genuinely a very fun experience writing the crossword. Normally with projects like this, I abandon them after a week, but it's been like very entertaining for me, really polishing and perfecting this whole project. Like, I've gone through 3 different versions. I rewrote my entire website to support an API. And I also recommend you have a go writing your own crossword. You know, boot up Crosserville, make a 5x5 grid, and just start figuring it out on your own. And if you do end up writing a crossword that you're very proud of, maybe send it my way and I'll put it in my website. Not a joke. You can email me at crossword.blue+submissions@gmail.com. If I like your puzzle, I'll put it in my game. By submitting a crossword to crossword.blue+submission@gmail.com, you agree that your crossword is an original design, that you've never submitted or published your crossword anywhere else, and sign for full rights to me to publish the crossword forever. Thanks for watching.